Everybody has a story, and every story needs to be heard. On this podcast, we are talking with each member of the General Conference Leadership Council. I'm your host, Alyssa Truman, and this is ANN Profiles. Today, I'm here with Faith-Ann McGarrell, and I am excited to have her joining us and to learn a little bit more about her life story. Hello, Faith-Ann. How are you doing?
Alyssa, I'm doing well. Thank you.
I love that your glasses and your shirt match. I just have to start off with that.
We have to match.
We do have to match, don't we? So let's start off real quick. Your title. What is it? Because you work in the education department,
Yes.
but I didn't want to get it all confused in my mind while I was trying to say it. What is your official title?
I am the editor for the Journal of Adventist Education. It is a peer-reviewed publication produced by the General Conference Department of Education. It's a professional development journal, and it is for educators and educational administrators who are working in Adventist education, kindergarten through higher ed. So we cover a wide range.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
It must be kind of fun, though.
It's a lot of fun.
How often does it get released?
It is released quarterly, so 4 times per year, and we are digital. And so we have the HTML version, and then we have a PDF version for those who want to print out articles to share. We are an open access publication, so that means that it's accessible to anyone at no cost, because we believe that the principles of Adventist education should be shared, and there should not have to be a subscription tied to it. So anyone can go to our website, journalofadventisteducation.org, and they can read articles right on the page, or they can download our wonderful app.
I love it. Normally, we don't get a little sales pitch beforehand, but I realized
opportunity.
No, it's okay. You owned that, and I love that for you. The reason why I wanted to do it, though, is because I don't actually think most Adventists even know it exists.
Well,
Maybe if you're in education, but I think
so.
regular members
Yes.
wouldn't even know that we have that. We would know we have an
Yes.
education department,
Yes.
but I felt like it was actually important for people to actually
That
understand.
is correct.
So
Yes.
you serve as the editor. So let's get to know the editor
Okay.
behind this fabulous peer-reviewed journal.
Well, wonderful.
So Faith-Ann, tell me a little bit about who you are. Where were you born?
I was born in Georgetown, Guyana, at the Davis Memorial Hospital.
You're like, I have the whole thing.
Yes,
What
I
time
do.
was it at?
It was a Tuesday.
It was
I know
a Tu-
that
wow,
much, but
okay.
I don't
That's
know
impressive.
anything else.
I don't think I could actually tell you when I was born, what time. I do know what day.
Okay.
I was born the exact same day Mount St. Helens
Oh,
erupted.
really?
So that
Wow.
actually kind of like, and I know it's
Yes.
like a few hours afterward, and I
Okay.
was saying like the world was so excited about me
This
coming,
was
it just had to
it
explode.
there you go.
Anyways, we have to take what we can, right?
Yes.
So you were born in Guyana,
Correct.
and you have mother, father. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, my father's a pastor, and we celebrated his 90th birthday in February, so we're very happy he's still with us. My mother was an educator and administrator, and she passed away last September. So we're still working through that particular situation. But they were working for the church. My dad was a minister in the Guyana Conference, and later he became the first native Guyanese to be president of the Guyana Conference.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and then after that, he went on to Andrews University and studied theology, religious education, and then he became dean of the School of Religion and Theology at the University of the Southern Caribbean, which used to be Caribbean Union College.
Okay, I knew that name.
Yes.
I wasn't sure about. So where, for people who don't know,
Yes.
where is that
That is
university?
located in Maracas, Trinidad and Tobago. And so right there in the valley, tucked away.
You're like,
So
it's
literally,
remote.
It's tucked away. But Maracas is still. I think it's getting a little busy now. But so that's my dad. My mom was administrative assistant, and then she went into teaching. She taught at the elementary level, and then she taught college composition, English composition, English literature. She was the dean for the humanities at the University of the Southern Caribbean, and eventually became the interim president, the first woman to do so, and then retired as a general vice president. So, administration and education, that was the life. And I was just lucky to be born into a part of it. And
What a
that was
beautiful
it.
heritage
Very interesting. Yeah.
to come from. So you lived in Guyana
We
in
lived
these
in Guyana.
early years.
Correct.
What were some of your favorite childhood memories that you've had?
You know, I thought about that a lot. I was able to live in Guyana for 8 years of my life. And what I remember, two things. I enjoyed the zoo because on the days where he was not hustling and bustling between churches, my dad would take me to the zoo and we would go see the manatees. We would stand on this little covered bridge and just look at the sea cows munching and eating, and I loved it. So that's one memory that I have. And the other is where we lived, you could sit on the back step landing and look all the way out, and you could see the Atlantic Ocean. And we would see these trawlers, these ships passing, carrying containers and fishermen and all sorts of things. And it just took my little mind into faraway places. Where were they going? Who were these people? What was on that ship? And I would sit for hours. My mom would say, "You have things to do." But those are two things that I really enjoyed. Growing up in Guyana was it shaped my entire experience. I had lots of books, luckily. My dad was a reader, and whenever he traveled, he would bring me back a stack of books, and I'd read them all, and he'd say, "You need to pace yourself because I'm not getting you anymore." And I think that's where my love for language really started.
Love for language or languages?
Language.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
I
that
only
we have.
speak one.
So you only speak English, I'm guessing, since you said one, and we're speaking in
Yes,
English
there
to
you
each other.
go.
Now, in Guyana, is
Yes.
English the predominant
Yes,
language?
it is. It was a territory of Great Britain. So under colonial rule, I think it is the only, not I think, it is the only English-speaking country on the South American continent.
Sounds like a country I should visit just because I also only speak English. So I feel like I'm at a
Yes.
disadvantage when I go to many of these countries.
Yes.
So you love literature. Your world is being opened up, and even just the presence of being able to see
Yes.
these ships.
Yes.
It starts to make you think about this like bigger things, like
Yes.
what is out there.
Correct.
Now, did you go through Adventist education?
In the beginning, no. In Guyana during that time, there was a lot of tension with the government and the political situation, and they closed all religious schools. And so I went to, I think it was Prep B, Standard 1, Standard 2, and the first few weeks of Standard 3, I was in a government school. And so it really was an Anglican school, but they couldn't call it that.
Okay.
And the Adventist school had, we closed. We complied with the government regulations. And one of the things that my father really wanted for us and for himself was Christian education. And so he made the decision just when I was turning, I think I was 10 years old. We left Guyana and we moved to Berrien Springs, Michigan.
Which is like almost exact same weather-wise, right?
Almost.
Equator,
Arctic.
Arctic. I think you're the first person who has put Andrews in the Arctic. But yeah, so you're like right here along the equator.
Correct.
And now you've moved to Berrien Springs, Michigan.
Yes.
You probably read about snow. I'm guessing you'd never seen snow before
Never
this.
saw snow in my life. And I'm really thinking that I don't know if I read anything about it. I think it was just, we arrived in Michigan in September.
Okay, so it's not snowing yet.
No, but was very cold. I remember putting not just blankets, but our clothing, at least for me at that age, piling it on top because I couldn't sleep. It was just too cold. But the first snow came right around Thanksgiving. And so our first Thanksgiving in Michigan, we experienced snow, and it was wonderful. And I think that excitement stays with me even now as someone long past 10 years old. It just, every time it snows, and it's so quiet when it snows.
It is. It's so
It's the
peaceful.
most peaceful moment in time. We're not talking about shoveling or anything else, just the falling snow. And so that was a major culture shift and transition. But I had my older sister with me and my parents, and we made it.
Well, what was that like? Because, for many people who are listening, even someone like me, I have traveled a little bit, not a lot, but we don't fully understand what it would be like to uproot and really just move to someplace that's totally different. What was it like for you as a family? And looking back, can you see things that, because of that experience, it opened you up to things? Were there some challenges that you struggled with? Let's just explore that with me a little bit.
Yeah, I remember the excitement of an adventure. In my mind at that age, it was an adventure. We were leaving everything that we knew, and we would move to a new country, and we'd go on the Pan Am. Pan Am at that time was the airline.
I actually am kind of jealous because I've heard of Pan Am, and
Yes, it does not exist
no,
anymore.
it does not exist, but it was kind of like this epitome
Yes.
of like almost like culture and like
Yes.
refinement.
It
And
certainly was. I mean, we had to dress up. This was a big deal.
do you dress up now when you get on an airplane?
No, I try to be, well, I'm professional and I try to be comfortable.
Professional
But
comfortable.
there you
That's
go.
a new
Business
genre
casual.
of clothing.
But I remember it was a major transition. But I also remember there was a little bit of sadness because that moment our family shifted. My older brother, he had reached that point where he too needed to move on. He went to West Indies College, which is now Northern Caribbean. So it was at that moment that the family split, if you will, because he headed off to Jamaica. We headed to Berrien Springs, and we would be apart for about 2 years. And then he eventually joined us in Michigan. But I remember that feeling of excitement, but also sadness. And when I think about it, there were a lot of people that I never saw again since after we left Guyana to go to Berrien Springs. Family, friends, yes, we connected, but there were people in our lives, neighbors and school friends that I didn't see again once we left. So it was almost like there was this breaking apart. But then when we arrived in Michigan, it was all new and exciting. And as I said before, we arrived in September. And it was that time of year where there's a lot of smoke in the air. The leaves are burning. We went apple picking. I mean, these are experiences that I had absolutely no connection to prior. And so it was very, very exciting. School was a little different. Within our traditional Guyanese system, there was a formality to education. And at Ruth Murdoch Elementary, my alma mater, it was a little more informal. You would talk to your teacher. You would ask questions. You would challenge your teacher. If you didn't understand, you would say it out loud. And so there were things to adjust to, and I remember those days. And I think what I learned, well, one of the lessons, you asked about lessons, things that I could take into my life now, would be that you have to value everything that happens in the moment. I remember I had a very good friend in the 4th grade, because that's where when we moved, that's the grade I started in. And we were wonderful friends. We would swing on the swings and, on the seesaw and the monkey bars. And that was my best friend. But then her father finished his program and they left the end of that year. And it was heartbreaking because my friend was gone. And then, okay, so now you make a new friend. Going through that challenge of saying hello, saying goodbye. And on a university campus, there's a lot of that happens. And, but still that anticipation of what's new, what's next, and how do I embrace it and make it work.
Yeah, I think that's something we don't think about a lot, is that transitionary aspect for really pretty much anybody who works for the church.
Yes.
But like when you go away to the seminary, you're often there, or to a doctorate program, whatever, and you're often there just for about 2 or 3 years. But it's not just you that's making that transition. It's your family often, and your children. Yeah. Sometimes those are during some of the most formative years.
Yes.
And so now they're just kind of being uprooted, and you're right, because you can make a friend your first year, and then their parent is done with it, and then then nobody comes the next year, we'll say, and then the next year someone comes, but you're leaving.
Yes.
And I know we struggled with that a little bit when we came here. It's like you just have all these people who are kind of like in flux in the GC and NED and all these areas, and so you just have these people who can come in and out of people's lives very quickly.
And being intentional about keeping those connections as best as you can, I think that was a lesson for me. And in terms of you made a point about it not just being the person who's going to school or the person who has that job that requires them to move, it's the family. And one of the things that I remember that I think kept us settled, my sister and myself, we had Friday evening our welcome Sabbath moments. And when my brother rejoined us or joined us in Michigan, that's one of my most powerful memories for the time we lived in Berrien Springs with the entire family. Friday nights were wonderful. Both my brother and sister play the piano, and they love to sing. And so we would sit and sing scripture recitation. That was my mother's thing. She wanted to make sure that we learned these things, and we did. But it was the singing lots of songs, playing around in the hymnal to try to make it sound a little more contemporary.
A little more pep to it.
Yes, a little more pep. But just the love of music and spending time with the family. My mother, she was a bread maker. She loved to make bread. And so these fresh loaves of whole wheat bread coming out of the oven Friday afternoons, knowing that we couldn't touch it until after worship on Friday night. And so there's a Guyanese, it's called a butter flap, and it's bread, but it's buttered, and folded, and then baked. So it's just...
Is it like normal dough?
It's normal dough, bread dough.
So you do butter,
yes,
and then you flap it over, and
butter,
then you butter, and then you
flap it over again. It's baked, and for those who like cheese, they put a little bit of cheese in there, but it's soft on the inside and buttery, and there's this light crisp on the outside because it's baked.
If you ever make some, just so you know, you can bring it to the office. I won't refuse it.
So we had butter flaps and singing, and it was just a wonderful time. Friday evenings, that's my most powerful memory for that time together. And I still enjoy some of it whenever I visit my sister and my dad, who is currently with my sister. So we try to recreate some of that when we're together. We sing into the night, and there's something about singing that soothes the soul and gives courage and hope, So I think part of our stability was holding on to those things that really made the family feel like, okay, we are going to be okay, even in the midst of transitions and in the midst of a change of scenery and a change of, dealing with new people and new ways of doing things. We're going to be okay because we have these things that don't change. The Word of God, a song in your heart, those things won't change.
I love that. And it shows that, because sometimes I know older kids they don't really enjoy some of these things at the
Yes.
same, kind of level. But years later,
Yes.
often they'll look back and they
Yes.
realize those are the things that kept them connected.
Correct.
And so as parents, it's important not to give up on something just because there's a little bit of pushback.
Yes.
Although we sometimes need to reinvent it.
Yes.
Okay, so you were at Andrews up until approximately how old were you when you guys left?
Well, we left when I graduated from high school.
Okay, so did you go
fourth
through
grade,
Andrews Academy?
Correct.
Okay.
So I did 4 years at Andrews Academy. That senior year, my mom left to go to the University of Southern Caribbean because they needed her there, and they needed someone in charge of the humanities department. And so she went ahead, and my dad stayed with me so that I could graduate and finish high school. He was about to defend, and he knew that if he defended, they would both return his dissertation, his doctoral dissertation.
Yes, okay. Just so people know what we're defending.
Yes,
so
thank you.
It's okay.
He had to defend his doctoral dissertation. So he stayed, and he did a wonderful job. Made sure I had breakfast every morning, made sure I did my homework, and that I went to my, excuse me, my piano lessons and all the other things I got myself tangled up in. But he was a soldier. He made it all the way through with me. And then when we came to the end of that school year, I decided that I wanted to go with them. By that time we lived in Michigan for 9 years, and I was ready to just see somewhere else. Because over that period, you had friends that they would come, they would go, and they were living in all of these different parts of the world. And I kept thinking, I want to go somewhere different. And so my dad said, well, the only place you're going is Trinidad, because that's where we're going. So that's how I returned with them to the University of the Southern Caribbean and did my undergrad studies there.
And what did you do your undergrad in?
I did an associate's degree in natural sciences because at that time I liked biology. I didn't like chemistry, but I liked biology.
Okay.
And I thought, well, maybe I'll pursue the sciences. But then I sat in as an elective in a literature course. It was Survey of English Literature. And all of those memories from childhood, reading books and stories and everything came flooding back. I had a wonderful professor. And
what was their name?
Dr. Drippall, Dr. Carlton Drippall. He was at that time teaching the Survey of Literature courses. And he was he was a storyteller. And so the class was a lot of fun. And then we had all of this reading to do, and we got to discuss it and contextualize it, because we were looking at Victorian literature and various time periods. But we're living in Trinidad, in the sun, in the Caribbean. So where's the context? And so we had a really good time just discussing, taking things apart, learning how to analyze, how to structure different types of writing. And I remember thinking, we had our graduation for the 2-year program that I was in for natural sciences. And I kept thinking, I don't want to do that. I want to read and write. And I'm changing. I'm going to 2 more years. I'm not leaving here. I'm going to finish my degree right here. So that's how I selected literature as my 4-year degree program. So after I finished the natural sciences, I transitioned over, and we worked out a program that I could complete the bachelor's in the remaining 2 years in English.
So out of curiosity, it sounds kind of like Adventist education became kind of like this given at some point. It wasn't that you were going to go to a different college. You were going to come back to Trinidad and go to the University of the Southern Caribbean.
Yes,
is that what's called?
correct.
Now? Okay. I'm not going to call it CSC. So you went there. Did you ever struggle with that? Or were you always just committed? Did you ever grapple with your faith in these years? Because I think often we live the faith of our parents, but at some
Mhm.
point it has to kind of become our faith.
Mhm.
Did you ever go through any of these experiences?
Sophomore year, Pastor Mike McKenzie came to Andrews Academy and did a week of prayer. And when we left Guyana, we were moving, and my father wasn't sure what would happen when we got to Michigan. So, and I've always loved Jesus because I was taught to love Jesus from childhood, the songs, the scripture, everything. And I remember I decided I wanted to be baptized. And my dad said, "Well, I would like to baptize you, but I don't know what will happen when we get to Michigan." So I was baptized in the Central Church in Georgetown, Guyana. And then everything moved on from there. But in the 10th grade, I remember Pastor Mike came and he held a week of prayer. And it was about the fact that Jesus loves us. Jesus lives and Jesus loves us. And I just remember I was in the girls' restroom and it hit me everything that he was saying, that Jesus loved me, Faith-Ann, and that if Faith-Ann were the only person on this planet that needed saving, Jesus would have done it just for me. And then the other thing, that Jesus is alive. I mean, we read the stories, the creation story, the crucifixion story. We know all of the stories. But the fact that Jesus lives and has the marks to show that he went through that experience. And it hit me because at that time, as a young woman, going through all of these changes, you know, the culture in school, the culture at home, the culture in the world around me, I was and I was reading lots of different things. And so in your mind, you're like, well, what's the point? Why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing? What do I want to do with the rest of my life? I was in the 10th grade. And I just remember that sense of it's going to be okay because Jesus loves you and Jesus has a plan. And so you asked if Adventist education was a given for me. I think it was a choice that I made that I wanted to go to the University of the Southern Caribbean. I could have gone anywhere. In fact, my parents made plans for me to remain in Michigan to continue my undergraduate studies. And I decided, no, I want to come with you. Of course, I wanted my own room and a backyard because we had lived in the apartments for a very long time. But we're not going to add that to the story.
Well, you did.
But
You just did.
I just did.
I love hearing about that conversion experience
Yes.
because I think that so often, especially as Adventists, we kind of were raised in our parents' faith.
Yes.
And it's Adventism is a very unique faith. It's something that it's just kind of like it's all part of everything, every area of your life. There's no area that
That's
Adventism
not there.
doesn't touch.
Correct.
You have like health, you have like what you do on the weekends, like your
Yes.
entertainment, everything
Yes.
Adventism touches in some way.
Correct.
And so for many of us, we live out this faith of our parents.
Yes.
But at some point, it has to become ours.
Yes.
Mine was actually between my freshman and sophomore year in high school. So
Wow.
I resonate very closely
Yes.
with what you're saying because it's all of a sudden like it just hits you.
Yes.
And I love that you remember who was a part of
I
that
remember.
journey. Have you ever reached out to him?
I've not seen him since or been in proximity, in that close proximity. But I think if I ever had the opportunity, that would be the first thing that I would say. He won't remember who I mean, we had, 70, 80 kids in that auditorium. But it was just the way that he spoke about Jesus. You could tell that Jesus meant something to him. He was not just speaking words. He was talking about his friend. And it touched my heart in that when I arrived at the University of the Southern Caribbean, and this is the other thing I think about Adventist education, our schools have a responsibility to create an environment that nurtures and that supports growth wherever you are in that relationship with Jesus Christ. And one of the things that I can say confidently without a doubt, my time there I mean, we were engaged. There was always something happening on that campus. We had blitzes. We would go out into the various churches throughout the island, and we would take over that church. All of, the college students on that minibus would go Sabbath school all the way down to the end of the day, and we would prepare the Sabbath school program, the church service. We would do the music. We would do everything and connect with the members of the church, and just seeing how different people come to Jesus and what their understanding is of Jesus, and being a part of that experience. And this wasn't just once a year. This was throughout the year. We had so many opportunities. We had branch Sabbath schools. We had, in addition to our academic work, we had wonderful opportunities and a very rich spiritual, nurturing environment. And I credit that for strengthening that 10th grade experience. In addition to me realizing that Jesus lives, and it's not just, there's something that happens when you read these stories over and over again. It's at this level, and you're just, okay, it's a story in the Bible. But to make it real, and you see how coming to know Jesus can change the life of a person and redirect it in another direction, if they're listening and they're willing to accept the leading of God, that's a powerful experience to witness. It's powerful to experience. And it brings together this sense that our faith has to be a living faith, one that we put into every aspect of our lives. Or else it just becomes something that we read about.
Wow, there was like so much I wanted to unpack right there. I love that you started that whole beautiful thought with the concept that it's the school's, I'm not going to say obligation, but we're going to use the word obligation, to try to help nurture our students spiritually where they're at. Which proves to be a challenge because just as a home where everyone can be at different levels, now you have a campus full of people at different levels. Yeah. And that's a challenge to every one of our chaplains, every one of our teachers, because it's not just the chaplain's role. It's not just the chaplains. Because every person who walks through our door should be given the invitation to know Christ. Personally in their lives.
That's why we're here.
And if they've left our school system and they have not been given that heartfelt invitation, and like you said, where you saw it in that pastor's life, you could see that love of Christ within him. If we have neglected to do that, then we have actually neglected to be Adventist education.
There you go.
I've gone through Adventist education my whole entire experience. And I've seen both sides of it.
Correct.
And it is there. And we can't think that it's not. But I am still in the church. And I do love Christ also because of my years of Adventist education. They were a formational thing for me. So after your associates, you move on, you get your bachelor's in
English literature.
Did you want to teach with this? Did you want to become a writer, a proofer? What did you envision for yourself besides reading lots of great books?
I was going to be the next well-known Caribbean author, if you will. In my mind, I saw myself sitting, arms folded, the glasses just right, the hair in a nice bun, just spewing words of wisdom to the world in my mind. But really, that's a very good question. I think there's another part of me
I love that you push the glasses back. You're like, no spewing of words. No. You're spewing lots of words of wisdom, just so you know.
Words, just spewing. The part that really, I was trying to figure out how could I be in this world and just enjoy the privilege that it was to be able to read and to write. So in my mind, I thought I could be a librarian. because librarians live in places where there are all the books, all the things, everything is there. And they get to read and to be with books all day. And
My daughter would really love
yes,
you. I'm just going to say.
my parents in their wisdom said, no, you need people. So, you can sequester yourself all you want, but you need people. So after I finished my undergrad, I returned to Andrews University and I did a master's in literature. And that's where Professor Dr. Douglas Jones was my advisor and a lover of books. To this day, he still puts out the list of books that he reads every year. And I saw in him someone who not only loved books and loved language and um, enjoyed writing, but knew how to communicate that to his students. And there are people that have all of those things, but they don't necessarily know how to communicate it to others.
Yes.
And he had that gift. He embodied it. And I wanted to be like him. So I wanted to teach. I figured out I wanted to teach. And the funny thing is, I had been teaching. I taught kindergarten Sabbath school. I taught young adult Sabbath school. I was Sabbath school superintendent at one point. And so this whole teaching thing was always a part of my experience, but I didn't, it's as if you see it as, well, that's something else. That's not my life's work. And it was during my master's period that I really embraced that. After finishing that program, I moved to Ocala, Florida, where I taught at an elementary school. I assisted because I taught in the preschool. I taught in the 4th grade. It was 7th and 8th grade. Whatever was needed for that day, Faith-Ann was there. And then finally, after that year, the opportunity to have my own English classroom, grades 9 through 12, Chicago Seventh-day Adventist Academy in Chicago, Illinois. That opportunity presented itself. And I taught high school English, creative writing, journalism, drama club. Yeah.
So, as a teacher who you've stated that Adventist education is to help point people, how do you do that through literature?
Oh my goodness, there's so many ways. I think one of the benefits of the whole process of reading and writing is that we encourage and we teach our students how to think about what is in front of them. And so with literature, we have the standard curriculum, which tells us, these are the books, etc., that they should know by in the 9th grade, 10th grade, etc., World Lit, American Lit. But we have the freedom and the flexibility to pull in the stories of people of our faith and to put it within a time period. So, the early 1800s, who's writing at that time? We have a lot of our church founders who had writings as well. So in terms of stories to tell, we're not lacking. The other thing, I think, is how we deal with the stories that we read, the lives that these people have lived, because our students are living lives.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to see themselves in these people. And how has faith played a part in the lives of these people that they're reading about? And how will faith play a part of their own lives? One of the things that I always pulled in for my lit classes, well, for writing as well, but more so for lit, because we're so steeped in the reading portion and the analysis portion, is having them tell their own stories about their own faith journey and about what God means to them, to write their own memoirs, if you will, at 16.
For your long life.
It's your whole entire life. But intentionally making the decision to pull in principles of faith as they read and as they analyze and as they critique the lives of the people that they're reading about. So how do we express grace and how do we express mercy? How do we live a non-judgmental, how do we take a non-judgmental approach to someone whose life is going in a very different direction because of the choices that they're making? How do we wrestle with this whole concept of choice? That God has given us choice. We choose Him, but we also choose and make decisions in our daily lives. And we can see in these characters that we read about that they may not make the decision that we would have made. Or what decision might they have made if they had been aware that there was a God that loved them? So finding ways to integrate it, it's intentional, it's consistent, and it's something that in the early grades it's a little easier because we have created our own books where that is already infiltrated. But as they get into grades 9, 10, 11, 12, they're reading literature and they're reading resources that will help them when they get to college. So these are things that
do you
are
ever see that there's like a
required.
dissonance there between Adventist worldview and often the books that we are giving our kids to read?
Yeah. And that's something that I don't know if it's I don't know if that's a bad thing. I mean, it's there. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, this is what's out there. What we have to teach our children to do is to critique and to analyze and to see, well, what are you reading and why are you reading that? And how does that affect your decision making and the choices that you have will make or the choices that you have made? So I think it's important that we teach them how to, rather than no, don't do
We
this,
want to
don't
teach
do
them to be
that.
critical thinkers,
Correct.
not mere reflectors
Not
of other
mere
men's
reflectors
thoughts.
of other men's thoughts.
I love that statement.
We want them to be able to critique it. Because not every child, once they leave high school, or every young adult, once you leave high school, depending on what you want to study, we may not offer it within our system. So they will have to go to a public campus, a public university. And that's one of the things in our department that I absolutely love, because we have public campus ministries, amicus. And we have another journal, Dialogue, that put in a plug there.
It's okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about
That's
Dialogue real quick?
College and University Dialogue. It's the journal prepared by the General Conference Education Department for our students and our faculty who live and work and study on public university campuses around the world. And so it tackles issues that they may face, challenges in terms of how do you live your faith in an environment where your faith might not be supported.
Do you think that's still beneficial for our Adventist students on our Adventist campuses?
It is. And thankfully in our libraries, all of our campus libraries, Dialogue is there. And I remember the first time I read Dialogue. I think after coming here, I realized that my first introduction to Dialogue was when it was actually launched, way back in the 90s. And so
you didn't have to put the date there. Nobody would have gone to check that out.
Okay. So, but it was in our college library, and I remember going through the articles. So it's beneficial for students on Adventist campuses as well. But the target audience really are those students who are on public campuses, to give them some support, some ideas of, well, this is something that every person that has lived in this world, because that's the essence of it. How do we live in this world? We may not have the opportunity to live in an environment where we're surrounded by everyone who believes the same thing we do.
Which is actually maybe not always the best
It's
anyways.
not always the best
It's kind
thing.
of dangerous because who are you going to reach and how do you know how to reach them?
There you go. So that
Gonna
helps
burst that
to
bubble.
build. It helps to build your ability to live with others. And so one of the other features of Dialogue that I really enjoy is the profile section. And they will look for individuals who are working in the public sector, judges and lawyers and scientists and writers, artists. There's a beautiful feature a few issues ago about an artist. Art. And just how is he living out his faith? And so I think it's important to have our students learn how to more than just telling them no or shutting the door or sequestering them away. And yes, it is dangerous because, as I said, we have choice. And there's always that chance that they may not choose what we want them to choose. But we still have to present the invitation to them, present the information to them, give them the invitation to follow Jesus, equip them with the tools so they can analyze and critique and give themselves the best chance of not just existing in this world, but living a full life, which is what God wants for each of us, a full life.
I wish you had been my English teacher. I mean, I loved my English teacher, but now I really wish you had been my English lit teacher. I was not in Chicago, so that wasn't going to happen.
Well, no, that. Well,
so you're in Chicago,
yes,
and you're teaching all these glorious young people.
Yes.
Where do you go from here?
Well, after teaching in Chicago, I had a moment where I said, you know what? I love my high schoolers, but
the glorious young people.
But it's time to change. And then I kept thinking, I'll tell you what really happened. During the summer months, I would return to school, and the conference gave the opportunity for teachers to go to refresher courses, instructional courses. And I had taken several instruction courses, and it was exciting because I'd come back to the classroom and put all these new things in place. And my students would say, would you please not go to school this summer? Because when you come back, it makes our lives more difficult. But I learned to love instruction and strategies for instruction. And I had gotten to the point where I'd taken all of the instructional courses available, and I was wanting a change because Chicago was busy. It was hectic. It was a city. And I was just craving something else. And I thought, well, maybe if I didn't teach everything, maybe if I was just focused on writing, composition, then I could do that. So I decided to return to school again and to pursue my doctoral studies in curriculum and instruction. And so that's what I did. And I taught basic writing, basic reading, and freshman comp, and did that for a while. But then, while doing that, my main advisor found out that I was teaching, and he said, well, you can be my teaching assistant for some of the intro courses in the curriculum program and for the education program. And so that's how I ended up actually teaching in the education department. As his graduate teaching assistant, Dr. Larry Burton. He was my advisor.
And this is at what school?
This was at Andrews again.
Back to Andrews.
Back to Andrews.
You can't quite leave there, can you?
Can't leave there. So Dr. Burton was my main advisor. Throughout my doctoral program, he was my dissertation chair, and my teaching experience was under him in the department. And then when I defended and completed the program, there was an opening in the department, and he said, I think you should apply. And I said, no, because I'm going to South Carolina to teach English. He said, you just did an entire program in curriculum and instruction. Why are you going to teach English? I said, no, I've interviewed. It's done. Well, it wasn't done.
I was going to say, I feel like as soon as you said it was done, I was like, yep, no, that's not the end of that story.
Because they convinced me to interview. He said it will sharpen your skills and so on.
I love that. It's like, that's not what he's really thinking, but that's okay.
So I did interview, and I had heard from South Carolina that I was in round 4, and they were sending me a ticket, and I would, go to see because that level you see the provost, the president. It was but a done deal, but they had not made the offer. This was just, you're at this level of the interview process. And I interviewed at Andrews. And after my interview, they invited me to join the department. But I was waiting to hear from South Carolina. And I waited. And then I said, you know what? My father always said, do the work that's in front of you. Something I think he pulled from Education, one of those books. Mm-hmm. Whatever's in front of you, do it with all of your might. And so I said, okay. Andrews is my home. All of the people that helped me become a teacher, they're right here. And this is a new phase of teaching. I need the support. And I accepted. I accepted the offer on a Wednesday afternoon. On that Thursday morning, I got a call from South Carolina saying, "We're so sorry, we're out of the office, and this person was out and that person was out, so we're ready to send your information." And I said, "Well, I already accepted another position." And so that closed the South Carolina door. And I stayed at Andrews for the next 7 years.
You really never leave Andrews, do you? you're like this 8-year-old girl moving from Guyana to this Arctic wasteland. And now you just never can leave. Although we have managed to get you down here.
Yes.
Not quite the equator.
Well, not quite the equator.
So you serve at Andrews and you start teaching.
Yes, I was a professor for the Teaching, Learning, and Curriculum Department. And for the last 2 years, I was the director for the Curriculum and Instruction Program. And while doing that, there's a lot of committee work that's part of your docket in addition to teaching classes. And I remember I had put in for, we start in as assistant professor, then associate, and then full professor. And I had applied. I'd reached a point where I could apply to be associate professor. And I did my portfolio, filled it out. And while I was doing that, one morning my dean came into my office, Dean Jeffrey, Jim Jeffrey. And he said, "Well, I want you to know that you've put in a lot of work and you have fulfilled your portfolio. I know you're working on that, but the editor for the Journal of Adventist Education is retiring. And I have put your name as one of the people to consider for that position." He said, "Should it go beyond this point, it will mean a transition." He said, "You won't be teaching." So I said, "Well, I really want to do this. I want to move this forward." He said, "Yes, I know that, but I'm just letting you know because I did it and I didn't tell you. So now I'm telling you." So I said, "Okay, Dr. Jeffrey, that's fine." And then I didn't hear anything else. And a few months later, I received a call from Dr. Beardsley Hardy, who is the Director of Education for the General Conference Department of Education. And she said, "Well, we're about to interview individuals. And so when are you available to talk with the board?" And so I thought, well, but I want to teach. After all of this, we've come to this point. Anyway, I did speak with the board and I spoke with her. And then they made a selection for someone else, which was fine because that to me was confirmation that I would be teaching. I put in my application for advancement in rank, and right about when they were about to make the decision, I got another call. The individual that they initially selected was unable to fulfill the process. And would I be willing to move to Maryland So I said, "Well, could I do it from here?" And they said, "No, you need to move to Maryland." And I thought, but then I won't be teaching. And it's like, yeah. So I asked if I could finish the year because this was about October. And she said, "Yes, you can finish out the school year, close off all of your advisees, your dissertation people, just wrap that up and then be prepared to move to Maryland." So I had about a good 7 or 8 months to wrap my mind around the fact that life was going to change and it was going to be very different. I had not been in an editorial function officially. You edit your students' work, you edit dissertations, you give advice, you do that type of work. Yes, you studied English and composition, so you have a sense of how it works. But to function in an editorial role was something completely new. And one of the blessings that I have had is that when I did make the transition here, the former editor, Beverly Robinson Rumble, she was still here. And she had a life's worth of wisdom to share. And Beverly has been one of my dearest friends and confidant. She's been a confidant, and she has really helped me to build and shape this concept of what it means to be an editor. She said years ago there used to be in this building an editorial group where all of the editors would, gather together and give each other encouragement and that kind of thing. And that, I don't know if that exists anymore, but I have had someone who has been very helpful and supportive as I began to understand what this role meant. What I do, I source articles, best practice articles on education content that is intentional about integrating faith, that we share with all of the Adventist teachers and educators around the world. So that's a very different way of going about things than I'm prepping for my class and I have these instructional goals to meet and da-da-da-da-da-da. But yet it's very similar. It's different, but it's similar. So that's how we got from Berrien Springs to Silver Spring, Maryland. And it was a transition. It really was. When you're teaching, you can be guaranteed that that no day will be the same. You will always have a different day because you have so many students and they are different on each day and your content changes. And then all of a sudden, I'm in a room, I have a computer, and I'm reading. And I remember being a little girl thinking, what I want to do is read and write. What work can I do where I get to read and write? And right now I'm doing just that. And it amazes me that God hears those little thoughts and prayers from when you're young and you don't know any better. And he says, you know what? That's something I think you can do. And my life path has brought me through up, down, all sorts of things in between to this point where I have the privilege and the opportunity to sit and to read the thoughts of Adventist educators who write for us and to help them shape these ideas and then to share it with others. So we've created this hub, this space where information can be shared, especially when we talk about the integration of faith and learning, because that's something we all want to do, but it's something I think we're all still learning how to do and how to do it well. And so that has been my move from Berrien Springs to Silver Spring.
I have thoroughly loved this. I mean, you and I, we've seen each other. We've talked a few times. I have fully come to love and appreciate you from this time together. Like, I feel so much more connected. One, I have gone through Adventist education. I'm actually going through master's at Andrews right now. So,
what are you studying?
Master's in pastoral ministry.
Pastoral ministry.
Yes.
Excellent.
So my daughter's a student at Andrews University right now.
Wow.
So we're loving on Andrews a lot in this episode here.
This is the Andrews team.
It's the Andrews team right here. So Andrews, you can send us some merch and we'll be totally okay with that.
Yes, we will.
What I've appreciated from our conversation, though, is this fuller picture also of just what makes Adventist education special and unique. Yes. What the church is trying to do to help grow our educators. Mm-hmm. We don't just say, okay, you're an educator, have fun.
Right.
But we're trying to help them figure out how to deal with this intersection of faith and learning.
Yes.
Because it is different than a public school where the goal is learning.
Yes.
Here we don't just want learning. We want whole person development.
Yes.
I can't think of a better person than you to be at the helm of this. And from that little girl who was watching it, now you're being able to interact with all of these people from all over the world and being able to explore and understand things. Each of those books that your father brought you home has led you to this moment. And what a gift that is that we are given. The gift of knowledge, the gift of reasoning, the gift of analyzing. So thank you for coming and for sharing with all of us. If there was one thing that you just would want to encourage anybody who's listening to know about how God moves in our lives, what would that be?
First, I would like to say thank you, Alyssa. This was a wonderful conversation. So, and I love this initiative. I think it's powerful to hear and to catalog the stories of others. It gives encouragement and support. And I think if there's one thing, there's so many things, but there's that for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. We say it and we memorize it, and I think there's something very unique about that statement, that someone knows who you are. Jesus knows who you are. And they have plans. And those plans might be, you may not know how everything will turn out in your life and how one experience will dovetail into another. But it does, because there's someone who knows you from the time you're yay high to, when you're ready to retire. And even in that stage, they know who you are. That person is Jesus. You are known, you are seen, you are loved. And so that sense of, I know the plans, I, the Creator God, I, the Redeemer God, I, the Alpha and the Omega, the omniscient, the omnipresent, I have plans for you. And it is to one day see you again. I mean, to me, that is what we need to declare and shout on every rooftop, on every corner, wherever it can be, because that, I think, is what our world craves right now. The recent research on loneliness in this world, people feeling separated and isolated. There is someone who knows who you are and has plans for you, plans for me. And one day we will see that person face to face. And if Adventist education has a part of introducing all of our students to that individual, that's why we're here.
Faith-Ann, I can't imagine even trying to continue a conversation after what you just said. That was beautiful. So you can push your glasses down a little, because you just spouted out some wisdom. We hope you enjoyed this episode of A&N Profiles with Faith-Ann. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel, wherever it is you're tuning in from today, because we don't want you to miss any future episodes. Thank you for spending this time with us, and join me next week as I continue to get to know the life stories of more inspiring people.